There will be the postponement of the payment of property taxes for the period June to September 2020.
Protect yourself from the novel coronavirus. Wash your hands thoroughly and frequently for at least 20 seconds each time. Avoid shaking hands and touching your face with unclean hands. If you have to cough or sneeze, do so into your flexed elbow or a paper towel and then dispose of it. Keep a distance of 3 feet away from anyone with the cold or flu-like symptoms. Boost your immune system with vitamins, drink plenty of water, and get adequate rest. Visit your doctor, the nearest hospital, or health center if you or a family member becomes ill. A message from the Ministry of Health and the National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA.
There will be fresh sums invested in the popular Fresh Start program to assist the poor and marginalized youths by providing access to capital to fund small and medium-sized business projects. $5 million will be provided in this regard.
Before touching the mask, clean hands with an alcohol-based hand rub or soap and water. Take the mask and inspect it for tears or holes. Orient which side is the top side, where the metal strip is. Ensure the proper side of the mask faces outwards, the colored side. Place the mask to your face. Pinch the metal strip or stiff edge of the mask so it molds to the shape of your nose. Pull down the mask's bottom so it covers your mouth and your chin. After use, take off the mask. Remove the elastic loops from behind the ears while keeping the mask away from your face and clothes. To avoid touching potentially contaminated surfaces of the mask, discard the mask in a closed bin immediately after use.
This is the beautiful island federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. It is a small country with immense wonders, stunning shorelines, breathtaking landscapes, and lively, lush forests. Another of its wonders is its people, a unique, vibrant, and proud culture. Here, Kittitians, Nevisians, and guests share this jewel. We are all seeking to make these islands a better place to live and a haven for visitors. But this little haven, our home, like many other beautiful places on the planet, is facing a growing threat, which is evident now at our doorsteps. This threat is the buildup of garbage in the oceans, shorelines, and landfills, primarily from single-use items. When we use disposable plastic and styrofoam products, we become responsible for this growing problem. we can make a difference. Our community is already finding creative ways to cut down on this waste, as well as raising awareness and changing mindsets.
We were not happy selling our organic food in styrofoam containers and plastic. So we decided to begin importing and using compostable food containers. We have reduced the waste that we produce, and we hope that this serves as an example to other businesses, large and small.
In the supermarket business, we have historically created large amounts of plastic waste. We are now encouraging our customers to refuse plastic packaging throughout. More and more people are stepping up and bringing reusable bags.
We only need to make a firm decision to start taking action. And when we all do our bit, collectively, we create huge changes.
As we are learning to appreciate and enjoy our outdoor playground, we feel sad to see all the plastic bottles and styrofoam in our seas. Now that we have realized that plastics are a threat to our environment, we are becoming more conscious of our decisions.
We live in an incredible place. Our islands are worth protecting.
By changing our mindset and leading by example, we become more comfortable in spreading awareness to our friends, family, and community of the many reasons why it is important to take good care of our environment.
It's up to me.
It's up to me.
It's up to me.
It's up to all of us.
It is up to all of us to make these changes. And when more people join our efforts, we ensure a more sustainable future.
One UN estimate put it that each year about 13 million tons of plastic is dumped into the oceans. And it is estimated that by the year 2050, we'll have more plastic than fish in our oceans. And so that kind of statistic is not sustainable at all for our environment. And so we have to do something. And that is why on World Environment Day, it is a People's Day where we have to do something about protecting and conserving our local environment.
CFBC are observing World Environment Day that's coming on this year, that's coming on the 5th of June under the UN theme of beating plastic pollution. On pollution of the environment, we cover broadly three areas or three types of pollution. One is land-based, air-based and water-based pollution. In all of those areas, plastic pollution is a problem, where plastic pollution can overwhelm our landfill and other areas where they accumulate as point sources. We also have where much of the plastic, once we have heavy rainfall, will make their way into the sea. And when the plastic is burnt, we get air pollution coming from plastic.
Give us an environmental studies assessment of what you see here.
Okay, over here you see some plastic waste that has washed up from the ocean. This can be hazardous, as if it's located on the beach, it shows that there's a lot more in the ocean because, as I said, it is washed up.
Mangrove swamp is home to many types of animals, and they come back to their habitats and they see all this plastic, all these foreign objects that they'd never seen before. They might eat it, that could potentially choke them, killing them off, and that lowers like the species diversity, you know, the amount of animals that actually live in the mangrove area.
We're on Keys Beach, and if you just step onto Keys Beach, so you walk, you hit grass, as soon as you hit the sand line, you're going to see tons of bits of plastic.
And so it ends up into the waterways, and we know, of course, that the sea brings it back on land. And then you have to think about the organisms eating it. And then it's stored in their fatty tissues, and it bioaccumulates. And then over a period of time, then you could have biomagnification as it moves up the food chain. It could be eating other organisms that these chemicals have been stored in their fatty tissues, and then we could get sick. So you have different illnesses that could come about from it, especially different cancers. Plastic is highly toxic for the human body, and so then we have to deal with that as an issue.
We're here at Greenleaf Hydroponics Farm, and we're talking about plastic and plastic pollution in the environment and how dangerous it is to our ecosystem and our plants and nutrient cycling. Things like centipedes and your insects in general. They are the ones that actually break down the once living matter, return it to the ecosystem in a nutrient cycling format, which we call the detritus cycle. So they're very, very important. Plastics impact them directly, and when we have situations where we have organic matter trapped or we have voids in soils created from large amount of plastic deposits, then we have that disconnect between the detritivores and the organic matter. So they slow the rate of return. If the plants can't grow effectively, animals can't eat effectively, and if they can't eat effectively, it affects us as well as the animals.
On this table, we are showcasing biodegradable, reusable alternatives to conventional plastics.
Alternatives to plastic use include cloth bags, and I'm sure that we can recall those bags that we used when I was growing up. We took those bags to the shops to purchase our bread and our groceries. We have bags made from jute or burlap, and you can also use bamboo containers. We can switch to glass bottles, ceramic containers. We can reuse instead of having our plastic bottles and just throwing them away after each single use, we can also have multiple use of our plastic bottles.
We can also educate the general populace about the use of cosmetics. These cosmetics, many of them contain microbeads, particularly facial scrubs, lotions, toothpaste. So we have to start thinking about things like sorting garbage. So you have your compost, which would be your chicken bones and your rice and the leftover bread and all that, separate apart from your aluminum cans, from your glass, from your pieces of metal, from your cardboards, everything. So it makes it a lot more efficient in terms of getting those materials out and repackage into something else and coming back into the community. We might have to partner with a facility that is equipped to handle sorting, and we already have a facility here in Ireland, which is Admirals, that does a pretty good job.
We have partnered with Ross now almost 4 years now. They have 30 bins, of which one for plastic, one for aluminum, and one for glass. And right now we are visiting there 3 times weekly for all of the locations, and then in the more busier spots we're now there daily. We have also a few private schools and a few public schools that some of the professors have taken upon themselves to use their classrooms and create projects with some of their students as well. And they will come together and they will collect bottles, and they will bring them already counted, and they will bring them here to have a cash redemption. And just in conversation with a few different students, we've heard that they're using these projects as fundraisers, which I think is a really neat project as well. whether they're trying to buy a chalkboard or something for their classroom. Again, so it's not that it's the teacher is enslaving the students and taking the money home to buy herself pizza. And I think that's something really neat to see.
Some of the courses that we offer at CFBC, environmental science and also environmental engineering. These are courses that make our students, our young people, knowledgeable of the effect of plastics on our environment and how we can provide mitigation measures. We have to attract our young people, help them to think creatively instead of using plastic-free materials. So the college can work in the sense that we're making awareness. Awareness is very important and getting our young people involved.
So this year the environmental science students in Unit 1 or Year 1, they were doing research on sand dunes, and we looked at 4 different areas. Keys Beach was one of the sites that were chosen, in addition to North and South Friars Bay and also as well as Frigate Bay. And so we realized that if we could use paper products or minimize waste, that would be the best way to go. So training them to be advocates for the environment is obviously the best thing that we could do.
Another advantage to having our students, faculty engaged.
And welcome to Leadership Matters. Over the coming weeks, the Leadership Matters Virtual Forum series will focus on the big stories and issues in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. And it will also show how leadership in practice is helping to transform the nation and people's lives. One such big story is the unprecedented impact of COVID-19 on our tourism industry and the economy at large. Citizens and residents are also having discussions around the pros and cons of opening up in the months ahead to facilitate what is referred to as non-essential cross-border travel. Whatever happens, it's clear that COVID-19 travel policies will remain front and center in the public dialogue for at least the rest of the year. Tonight on Leadership Matters, we will continue discussing a careful, well-managed approach to opening up St. Kitts and Nevis. But you are welcome to weigh in with your opinions and questions on other topics. Joining Prime Minister Dr. the Honorable Timothy Harris tonight is Minister of Tourism, Transport and Ports, the Honorable Lindsay Grant, Chairman of the National COVID-19 Task Force, Mr. Abdia Samuel, and the Chief Executive Officer of the St. Kitts Tourism Authority, Ms. Raquel Brown. Minister Grant will be joining us only for the first hour of the program. After the opening remarks, you will have an opportunity to participate in Leadership Matters. The call-in numbers are 869-466-2666, 662-8674, 767-4765, and our overseas line is 239-645-4500. Questions can also be sent via WhatsApp to 869-661-5683. However, first preference will be given to those who phone in to the program. I now call on Prime Minister Harris to present his opening remarks.
Thank you, Valencia, and let me welcome all those who are tuning to this edition of Leadership Matters. St. Kitts and Nevis, like the rest of the world, is learning to adjust to the new realities of the coronavirus among us. We did very well to contain the spread of the virus. We flattened the curve. We experienced a 76-day period with no new cases after our 15th case. This was quite a remarkable feat. We cannot now afford to become complacent. The experience of the Bahamas, with its 49 new cases within a few weeks of opening up its border, is a stark reminder that we have to exercise due care and attention, and that the health protocols cannot be abandoned. This lesson is being emphasized in Barbados and Grenada of recent vintage. Florida, Arizona, and Texas have learned this lesson. We have to approach the matter with clear heads and focus on the right thing, that is, saving lives. So far, we have done excellently on this score. We have had no deaths on account of COVID-19, and most of those infected have nicely recovered. Our strategic actions must aim at saving lives, not accommodating avoidable deaths. The federal government will continue to focus on interrupting viral transmission and minimizing, if not avoiding, mortality associated with COVID-19. Even as we continue the carefully managed and organized opening up of our country to business and the return to near normalcy. This approach has served us well. We opened up our country slowly and carefully. More persons are now at work than there were in April of this year. Every area of socioeconomic activity has benefited from the phased lifting of our restrictions. As we refine our plan for the gradual and managed opening up of our country, first domestically, ensuring as many businesses and other entities, such as our churches, our schools, could operate as near normal, we have now turned our attention to further opening up to regular people movement by regional and international commercial modes of travel. The discipline of our people and the excellent advice of our task force at the National Emergency Operations Center have helped us in a very careful manner to open up to business while minimizing harm to our people. With such a success story, there is no need for anxiety and slackness. We have a rich experience of a modus operandi that has delivered results for our people. We have always been listening, and I continue to listen and marvel how God has helped us through many snares and tests. Our success story includes restoring our agricultural sector, including crop and livestock farming and the fisheries subsectors. This sector was one of the first to be opened up. We provided strong support to farmers and fishers. We provided them, for example, fencing wires, free seeds and seedlings, free harrowing services, among other inputs to advance food security. We invested a significant $10 million in this sector through our stimulus program. The manufacturing sector received our attention too. All of our export manufacturing plants have been facilitated to operate under the new norms. Very shortly we expect that Jara Limited will be back to full operation. Our next big task is our hotel and hospitality sector. Most persons are optimistic that in good time we will see more opening up there, especially in our hotel sector. This is the most challenging, since this calls for the opening up of our borders to larger and more regular influx of persons, many of whom will be returning from areas which are coronavirus hotspots, meaning that the likelihood that they will transmit the virus on arrival is greater. If we are not careful in opening up our borders, the consequences could be severe. We could experience, for example, the overwhelming of our limited quarantine facilities, the overwhelming of our security forces in managing quarantine facilities at several locations, the overwhelming of our health sectors, and eventually many persons can die. Our approach must be that we will do things properly. we need to take time to set up systems that minimize fatalities and preserve the health of our people, because we need a healthy people to keep our economy open. We need a consistent public education program reinforced by actions at home, in the retail and wholesale establishments, in our schools, and indeed in all workplaces and places of recreation. And all of society buy-in must be ignited again. Our approach is to be aware of the challenges and work to overcome the challenges, even as we take advantage of the opportunities presented by the unique circumstances of COVID-19. Some opportunities present themselves, including identifying a wide array of entities over and beyond hotels that can provide quarantine services, villas, residences, to name just two. Expanding the number of persons beyond the police and defense force trained to provide surveillance services at quarantine sites. We have, for example, in the past, to enhance the safety in the touristic sites like Port Zante, the St. George's Anglican Church, Blockrocks, sought to fill the gap by training a cadre of island constables. The question can be asked, can a similar training be conducted to increase the number of persons who can competently monitor and respond at quarantine sites? More opportunities, of course, must be available for additional molecular testing facilities to provide quicker turnaround results as we open up our borders. We note that our main hospital, the JNF Hospital, now has the equipment to do high-quality tests for COVID-19, and we are working to set up equipment and put staff in training so that we can do more tests in St. Kitts and Nevis. The training of all persons involved in the provision of hospitality service, including the taxi operators, tour operators, receptionists, and front-end workers in our hotels, is necessary. Decisions regarding the time and how we open up will not be made by the whim and fancy of any person or group of persons. That is why in St. Kitts and Nevis, we have adopted the all-of-society approach, where input is had from a diverse cross-section of persons and interests. We are aware of the advice of the World Health Organization to nations that in addition to fighting the COVID-19 pandemic, they must also consider the social and economic impact of the measures taken on their citizens and residents. We will continue to strike a delicate balance between fighting the virus and maintaining social and economic activity so no citizen or resident will suffer. We intend to protect and save every life. That is the plan of your caring government. People matter most, and my government is a people-centered government. Ultimately, the government will make the decision, given due regard for the views of our health experts, our security services, our business community, faith-based organizations, hoteliers, and the ordinary man and woman in the street will certainly have a powerful say. COVID-19 is at heart a health pandemic which has morphed into an economic crisis. We have to halt the health consequences of the pandemic to get the economy going in the right direction. The experience in the United States of America tells us that. In St. Kitts and Nevis, we promise our people that at all times we will act responsibly and in the national interest. Fortunately tonight, we have representatives from the tourism sector and the National Emergency Operations Center to share information on the progress we are making and how we are managing our plan to open up our country. I want to take the opportunity at this time to welcome my cabinet colleague, the Honorable Lindsey Grant, in his capacity as Minister of Tourism et al., and to welcome also Mr. Abdias Samuel, who heads the National Emergency Operations Center. I welcome them both to this popular People's Forum, Leadership Matters.
Remarks.
Thank you. Thank you, Prime Minister, for that very broad overview and oversight of the what I would consider situational analysis of what we have here today. This evening I will just focus on a couple of main areas so that we can have some specifics on what I consider to be a critical area in tourism. I will first of all outline the situation analysis as it pertains to our source markets, both of the United States, Canada, the United Kingdom, and the Caribbean. As it stands today, the United States amounts to and accounts to 70% of our visitors into the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. As you would be well aware, the epicenter of the COVID-19 rests in Florida, which is really our hub into the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. And clearly, Florida now represents the epicenter for the virus in the United States. In Canada, Canada amounts for 10% of our source market, and I can say to you that they are managing their COVID-19 cases, and Canada has really at this moment flattened the curve. In the United Kingdom, which is 15% of our source market at the moment, they also have managed their COVID-19 cases to have at this moment to flatten their curve. The Caribbean, with the exception of Dutch and French territories, have no major concern. Of course, our concern into the Dutch and French Caribbean is that for them, that there are no domestic travelers. And so if you arrive out of the Dutch and the French mother countries, you have no issues there in terms of testing, and that's a concern for us. But in terms of the English-speaking Caribbean, at the moment, I would venture to say we are in a pretty good position. In terms of St. Kitts and Nevis and in terms of our marketing, we have been doing extensive work in our source markets to prepare our stakeholders for our phased reopening. I must stress at the moment that in terms of reopening our borders, that is really a very fluid situation. And so we can't, I believe, and I will have to let Mr. Abdias say otherwise, but I believe at this moment we can't really say or give a date in terms of our opening because of the fluid nature of the virus at the moment. Safe to say that we are making sure that we prepare locally for when the time comes in terms of opening our borders. In terms of the United States, we have been doing some relevant and I would consider inspirational posts, both on Instagram Live, to make sure that the marketing aspect is kept alive. The Chief Executive Officer, Mrs. Raquel Brown, has been doing such. Mr. Widdowson from Carabel Batik. We have Roger Brisbane from Spice Mill. The last installment being somewhere in the region of August the 13th, 2020. Social media posts have been well underway, really indicating to those overseas about the warmth and serenity of St. Kitts and Nevis, and to awake the senses of persons who may want to travel when we, I would say, get out of this critical period of the COVID-19. When we look at our Canadian market, our team is currently working with golf clubs to promote the destination. And that again is somewhat dependent on what really happens over the next few weeks in terms of the opening of our borders. In terms of the UK, we've been having Zoom meetings, hosting some happy hours virtually, of course. Our St. Kitts team in the UK is promoting the destination to travel agents and to make sure that when the borders open, that we will be ready. In the Caribbean, currently we are working on a collaborative video with the Nevis Tourism Authority, which will be used to promote intra-regional travel. And of course, I believe that over the discussions this evening, would recognize, Mr. Prime Minister, that it's very difficult just to open up to the international travel just like that. I think we have to operate on a phased approach. I believe, Mr. Prime Minister, we need to open up locally, first of all, fully. Then we go to the regional marketplace and then the international marketplace. And so I think it has to be a phased approach. I believe persons and citizens in St. Kitts and Nevis will come to understand at the moment that we're in a really critical space. And so it's not business as usual. And we have to appreciate that things are going to take time. The safety and the health of our citizens come first, and everything thereafter. We also appreciate that the economic health of our citizens is as important as the health and safety of our citizens. And that is why we are very open and transparent in terms of the dialogue that we have on an ongoing basis, because the decisions we make are not the decisions of the cabinet, are not the decisions of the health experts, but really at the end of the day are the decisions of each and every citizen of St. Kitts and Nevis who shares a part with the concerns of the COVID-19 virus. In terms of our human capital and physical product development, we have had meetings with the stakeholder groups such as the bars and the restaurants in St. Kitts, the water sports and the catamaran operators, the hoteliers, the GT operators. That is set for Thursday, the 23rd of July. And we are making sure that every segment of the stakeholder industry in tourism is connected, and we have discussed the issues with them. We are in the process of the establishment of protocols from the St. Kitts Tourism Authority, the Ministry of Tourism, the Ministry of Health, and NEOC, working on protocols for the various businesses and the operators in the tourism sector, which is very, very important. In fact, even as this morning we met with the airlines and the airport to determine what protocols we are going to have when we reopen the airport, which is very significant, because you must appreciate also that this is a serious time. We have seen Bahamas, for example, who have opened up their airports and I think have shut down their operations at the moment because they have had a spike in the number of COVID cases. We have seen Antigua, who have have opened up their borders and have seen increase in their numbers. And so we want to make sure that we do the right thing in St. Kitts and Nevis. And so at the end of the day, when we open up with a consensus by the majority of persons in St. Kitts and Nevis, and that we open up in a phased manner and in a manner that we can control this virus, because we are appreciative that in St. Kitts and Nevis, at the moment, we have 2 live cases, I think it is. We had 0 cases a few weeks ago, and I believe this is very significant for us. And at this juncture, I want to pause to commend the health experts, the NEOC, for the tremendous work and effort being put in by them, going beyond the call of duty. I'm sure 25 hours a day sometimes, I imagine. And not only them, because we have to also commend the security forces who have done a marvelous job. And I believe that even now, as I lie on the strip on weekends and when the police come and shut us down at 11 o'clock, people are understanding of the nature of the issue that we have at hand and are respectful in that regard. We have had to embark on a number of training exercises, and in fact we start training this Wednesday again with the bars and the restaurants in St. Kitts to prepare our stakeholders to provide the service that is really different in this environment of the COVID-19. And all businesses and operators working in the sector will be required to attend training. And I want to pause at this moment to say that the businesses, the restaurants, or the bars who do not avail themselves of the training facilities in conjunction with NEOC and the tourism stakeholders will not be allowed to open. It's just as very simple as that. Because after the training exercises, you're going to get a certification, and the bars and the restaurants that don't have those certifications will not be allowed to open. It is very, very simple, because we have to protect the health and the well-being of our citizens. That begins on Wednesday the 22nd and continues until August the 27th, 2020. Week 1 runs from the 22nd to the 24th of July, which would be the bars and the restaurants. Week 2 from the 27th to the 31st of July, which will be the taxi and tour bus operators and accommodations. We will introduce a travel approved seal, and really the objective is to identify businesses and operators that meet the minimum health standards and safety protocols. We need to establish a minimum standard, improve the visitor confidence, and that we can use as a marketing tool and can be leveraged in the marketplace as a value-added item, improving the destination marketability. Of course, you've seen our recent product enhancements in the Black Rocks, in the new viewing platform, and Prime Minister, I want to thank you for coming out, I think it was last week, in that magnificent ribbon cutting ceremony that we've had, and which would really have been making some waves throughout not only St. Kitts but regionally and internationally. You've seen the ongoing refurbishment of the strip our installation of restrooms and lighting at the Cockleshell Beach, and right now our ongoing work at the St. Kitts Eco Park. All of those are issues and product enhancements that we are getting ready to open St. Kitts and Nevis. As to when it will be open, that is up for discussion, not only this evening, but an ongoing discussion to make sure that we have the buy-in of the community in terms of our opening up. Just a little update on the St. Kitts, on SCASPA. Our airport and seaport works within the Civil Aviation and the National Aviation Committee, NEOC, and the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Tourism, and SKTA. We are moving to identify the health and safety protocols and additional standards of operation relevant to the COVID-19 era. You would appreciate that you're going to see some changes at the RLB International Airport as we move towards identifying the protocols that are necessary to make sure that our health and safety of our citizens and our visitors is paramount. And Mr. Prime Minister, with those few words, I will pass it over to the chair lady.
Thank you very much, Minister Grant. We will take a break prior to Mr. Abdias Samuel's opening remarks. But just before we do, I'd like to repeat the numbers to phone. They are 869-466-2666, 662-8674, 767-4765, and our overseas line is 239-645-4500. Questions can also be sent via WhatsApp to 869-661-5683. However, first preference will be given to those who phone in to Leadership Matters. When we come back, Mr. Samuel will deliver his opening remarks.
There'll be the postponement of the payment of property taxes for the period June to September 2020.
Before touching the mask, clean hands with an alcohol-based hand rub or soap and water. Take the mask and inspect it for tears or holes. Orient which side is the top side, where the metal strip is. Ensure the proper side of the mask faces outwards, the colored side. Place the mask to your face. Pinch the metal strip or stiff edge of the mask so it molds to the shape of your nose. Pull down the mask's bottom so it covers your mouth and your chin. After use, take off the mask. Remove the elastic loops from behind the ears while keeping the mask away from your face and clothes. To avoid touching potentially contaminated surfaces of the mask, discard the mask in a closed bin immediately after use.
Matters. I will invite Mr. Abdias Samuel to make his opening remarks before we take your calls.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Honorable Prime Minister Dr. Timothy Harris, Honorable Minister with Responsibility for Tourism, Mr. Lindsey Grant, other distinguished members of this forum, all who are tuning in via all forms of media, a pleasant good night. I wish to thank the Honorable Prime Minister for affording me the opportunity to share this platform with him in engaging the general public in providing information and addressing doubts for the purpose of reassurance. The National Emergency Operations Center was activated when our borders was closed due to the imported cases of COVID-19. The government of St. Kitts and Nevis acted swiftly on the advice of the technical teams to activate and deploy the necessary resources for the preparedness and response to the threat of the novel coronavirus. Our outstanding medical professionals and other technical teams began preparedness activity exceedingly early in January of 2020, and this redounded to the Federation only having 17 confirmed cases with 15 recovered and 2 active cases presently. The technical group then became the National COVID-19 Task Force, which coordinated a comprehensive public awareness campaign that prepared our citizens for the impact of the virus to our lives and livelihoods. Our citizens and residents rose to the occasion and exercised patriotism in its highest form in command to the battle call of the Honorable Prime Minister to shelter in place as we fought to contain and eradicate COVID-19 within the Federation. We closed our borders to a few countries at first, then to all countries as our list grew, and finally, we were forced to isolate from the entire world. We then experienced challenges with the accessibility of goods and services, be it food or hardware supplies. This unprecedented and complex situation challenged our knowledge base and expertise. Technology was used to facilitate the adaptation of new protocols to facilitate social and physical distancing, our new norm. The first wave of COVID-19 has been contained. The restrictive measures were relaxed gradually and systematically. The government response with the stimulus package added value to the response effort and the lives of many citizens affected by the impact of COVID-19. The leadership provided by the government ought to be applauded. Emergency powers regulations were created to guide the way individuals and sectors should operate. The manufacturing sector was proactive in developing pre- and post-impact plans for the restoring of this sector. To date, 75% of the manufacturing sector have returned to work. Just as recently, as of the 20th of July, 30 more workers from this sector were authorized to return to work. The agricultural sector was given great attention as food security was a high priority to the task force and the government by extension. Crop farmers, livestock farmers, and fishermen were engaged to ensure continuity in the food supply chain. The commercial sector was gradually opened as small businesses, such as beauty salons and barbershops, were sensitized as per the new norm of operation. It must be noted that none of these small businesses have been a source of transmission or spread of the virus. The education and sporting sector exercise their institutional responsibility and have developed protocols using international guidelines with the guidance of the National Task Force as per the opening of these sectors. A phased approach to education was adopted by allowing the 6th and 5th formers to undertake their SEC and CAPE examinations. The reopening of the early childhood development will be the second phase, and subsequently the reopening of the primary and secondary schools. The COVID-19 task force further explored other activities to stimulate the economy, with the reopening of bars and restaurants after consultation with this sector. The opening of small businesses that supports tourism activities and the return of our foreign students will significantly contribute to stimulating the economy. The repatriation of our citizens continue to be an ongoing controlled process that allows our citizens who were trapped in the diaspora after our borders were closed to return home. Therefore, noted activities were carried out in a very meticulous and methodical way to ensure safety for our citizenry with no compromise to the health and well-being of our citizens. Our social lifestyle is slowly being restored with the opening of beaches, churches, and other forms of social activities. The reopening of Caribbean 8 Cinema was another indicator of the returning to normalcy within the sphere of the new norm. Let me emphatically state that complacency must not be adopted as the new acceptable norm in society. The successes gained must not be lost by willful disobedience, but instead, we must enhance this and sustain it so that we can coexist with the COVID-19 virus. I would like to acknowledge the contribution of Dr. Hazel Laws, Dr. Cameron Wilkinson, the entire Ministry of Health, now being managed by the Honorable Akila Byron Nisbet and formerly by the Honorable Wendy Phipps, as well as PS Delores Stapleton Harris, Dr. Keisha Leedy, and her team of environmental health officers, Nurse Irish and her team for the great work that they are doing in contact tracing and testing. The emergency medical teams and all the doctors and nurses of the Joseph N. France General Hospital, auxiliary and maintenance crews for the JNF Hospital, and all the health facilities on island. The members of the task force, in particular, Ms. Ophelia Blanchard, Ms. Merceline Hughes, Ms. Kay Bass, Superintendent of Police, Mr. Cromwell Henry and Travis Rogers, Mr. Kennedy De Silva, Mr. Denzel James, Leswell Williams, Vesta Southwell, the High Command of the Royal St. Christopher and Nevis Police Force, the commanders of the St. Kitts Nevis Defense Force, and everyone who have contributed to the success of the response. I also wish to specially acknowledge the support provided by the Honorable Vincent Barron Jr., the Honorable Wendy Phipps, and the entire NEOC, guided by Ms. Clarissa Langley Stevens. Equally, I must acknowledge our social partners and civic society, the St. Kitts Nevis Chamber of Industry and Commerce, the St. Kitts Christian Council, and the St. Kitts Evangelical Association, the various clubs and the various non-governmental organizations that have supported this cause. My gratification comes from the faith in God and that our leaders and citizens of our Twin Island Federation, together we have triumphantly crushed the first wave of COVID-19, bearing in mind that our proactive approach can be compared to a David in a Goliath world. The successes gained must not be erased or be at the mercy of haste to do what is favorably profitable for a few in our society, but for the greater good of all in this federation. I am confident that our people possess the skill sets required to maintain a highly competitive country in this competitive world. We have the fortitude to be a resilient nation, and I end by saying, let us be the first to be last and the last to be first in reopening our sectors responsibly. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Samuel. It's 9 o'clock on the dot. We'll take a very quick break. I'd just like to remind you of the numbers to phone because we'd like to open the phone lines. They are 869-466-2666, 662-8674, 767-4765, and our overseas line is 239-645-4500. We'll be back after a quick break.
There'll be the postponement of the payment of property taxes for the period June to September 2020.
Welcome back to Leadership Matters. We have a phone call. Before we get to the phone call, I'd like to advise you that there is just a slight delay, so please listen to your phone, the conversation we're having with you. Don't listen to your radio and television at that point. Just move away from it to avoid the feedback. Good night. You're live on air. Welcome to Leadership Matters. Good night. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, good night. My name is Tom Richard. I want to welcome all of you again to Leadership Matters. To the Prime Minister, I was supposed to take around 12 meetings, but I didn't get to, so one way will be possible. I understand on Saturday, but I was not informed. My number is 663-7610, and you know me as Tom Richard, please, Thomas. So you could tell me, and all the best. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Richards. Would you like to ask a question? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Richards. Do we have another call? No, we don't have another call. I'd like to just ask a question of Minister Grant. And okay, I'd like to ask a question of Minister Grant, sorry. So Minister Grant, according to the World Travel and Tourism Council, WTTC, in its 2019 Economic Impact Report for St. Kitts and Nevis, the total contribution of travel and tourism to our GDP in 2018 was US $634.5 million. It says this represented 62.4% of GDP. In 2010, tourism made up 48% of GDP. 62.4% of GDP equates to thousands of jobs, and so it is important to implement new operating protocols for the tourism industry in order for everyone to get back to work and do so safely. Okay, I will finish my question, but before I do that, there's a phone call. So good night, caller. You're live on air.
Good night. Hello?
Yes, go ahead, please. Just listen to...
Hello, good night. Hello?
Caller, we can hear you. Please go ahead. Just talk into your phone, please. Thank you.
Yes, good night. I just want to tell Lindsey Grant to stay focused. Do not listen to the negative noise. To stay focused. He's a good man. Empty barrel make the most noise. Lindsey Grant stay focused, and the Prime Minister doing a wonderful job for the people of this country. He's doing a wonderful job. Lindsey Grant stay focused. You are doing a perfect job. Do not listen to the negative noise. I thank you.
Thank you, caller. We have another caller on the line. Good night. You're on Leadership Matters. Just talk into the phone, please. Go ahead.
Good night, Buckingham Media. I want to say good night to my Prime Minister, the Prime Minister of the Nation, Dr. Timothy Harris, the representative number 4, Honorable Lindsey Grant, and Mr. Samuel. Good night. Mr. Grant, since you're going to be leaving, let me direct the first question to you. Is there any plan to enhance the tourism sector in St. Kitts? I see Black Rock have been get a facelift. I know Old Road Bay project is still underway. You have Old Road Fishery, but I'm looking to see if there's anything else that you have under your belt or you would like to accomplish as we gradually are looking into opening back up so we can attract tourists to our nation to see something different or have some more things to do. With that said, Prime Minister, I definitely want to thank you for keeping us safe. Persons are making noise about the mask, and some measures have to be taken to place. But in a nutshell, thanks for keeping us safe and continue doing what you're doing, because without you, no one knows what would have become of St. Kitts. So continue doing a good job. You're on the right path. Stay focused.
Thank you very much. We have another caller on the line. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, a pleasant good evening to everyone. Yeah, my question is to Mr. Samuel. I share his view in asking for volunteer. I'm a volunteer also, right? But the problem is, persons like myself who work in the private sector have some issue in connection. A number of times there will be meeting during work really hard that, especially in time like this, you missing out on getting paid, and you're doing a volunteer for service for the country. And I don't know what government via NEMA could do in connection with the private sector. Maybe they could ask them to allow the workers who are part of NEMA or any volunteer group to get the time off when needed with pay, because it's really difficult for doing national duty and still losing pay. And for the Prime Minister, personally, I think that personal and statutory board should be part of volunteer group. Thanks.
Thank you very much, caller. Do we have another call? Go ahead, please.
Yes. Good night. Praise God for Mr. Prime Minister. I'm calling to ask him if he's open on seeing anyone, because I have a very important question to ask him in person. And my name is Dora Payne from Boys Village, and I told him that the Lord had chosen him. Has been chosen, and I'm so happy to see him online tonight. So I thank God for all the team, everybody, the doctors, everybody, and the First Lady. The First Lady, you know who the First Lady is for the team. God bless her, and God bless you, sir. So can you please let me know if I can come in to see you, sir, because it's very, very important, sir.
Thank you very much. Do we have another caller? Go ahead, please. You're live on Leadership Matters.
Hello, good night. Good night, Prime Minister. Good night to everyone. Yeah, this is Miss Unity calling. Prime Minister, I want to congratulate you on the good work you're doing for the people of St. Kitts Nevis. And I want to tell you, just keep on doing what you have to do. And remember in life, don't care what you do, some one side and some one the other. And this is what Jesus done for us. He gave us a good Prime Minister and a good team, loving, caring, and always listen to the voices of the people. Long live Prime Minister and long live Team Unity as we go from strength to strength. Blessed love, and you have a safe journey home. What else can Jesus do? Prime Minister, thank you so much, and God bless you. Okay? Bye. Good night.
Thank you very much for your well wishes. Do we have another caller on the line? Go ahead, please. Good night.
Hello, good night. Good evening to everybody. I would like to say congratulations to the Prime Minister, Mr. Grant, for doing such a wonderful job on the island in terms of the COVID-19. These situations are very difficult situations, and from time to time I'm listening to the radio, and I want to ask the Prime Minister, whenever you send money overseas, whether it costs the water or not, the people is the people money, and people must understand in these critical times, when they're asking for more and more money and face year, they should show how they're spending the federal money. Because not just to receive more money, so when the man from overneed asking for more money and more money, then you have to spend money for the airports so people come from St. Kitts to go over or the money he's collecting. In music, that's supposed to be collected in St. Kitts. Is all the money is going to be sent down to St. Kitts. Then you want to share. That is my calling point.
Thank you very much. We have one caller, and then I'd like to allow Minister Grant to answer the question because he has to leave soon. So go ahead, caller.
Good evening, gentlemen of Leadership Matters. Mr. PM, I must imagine you must have sleepless nights worrying about when exactly our port should be opened. Mr. Grant, two quickies. You say you're already working in conjunction with your marketeers overseas in Canada, United States, and England. Is there any indication as to what our responses would be for the upcoming tourist season? The sort of anticipated arrival rates that we can have, firstly. Secondly, as you've taken over the port, as Casper, the second cruise port, I understand, had an issue some time ago with the depth not meeting the contracted depth. Wouldn't this be a good time when there are no cruise ships coming in to sort out that problem, if there really is a problem? And for Mr. Samuel, when the cruise ships do start coming in and 2 Oasis class vessels come in and this guards something like 10,000 persons, do we have the health personnel in place to do the necessary checks for COVID-19? I'll be listening off here for your answers. Thank you.
We thank all the callers. We'll go straight to Minister Grant so he can answer his related questions because he has to depart the show.
Thank you, Press Secretary. And I would wish to begin with the first question I got some time back, which was really what are we doing to enhance tourism in St. Kitts and Nevis. I think the caller alluded to the Black Rocks and they alluded to Old Road Bay, and they were actually saying that what do we have next in the pipeline, if I'm to understand the caller correctly. And I should point the caller then to the Frigate Bay Enhancement Project, which is the strip, as it is affectionately known. You know, that's an ongoing project between the government of St. Kitts and Nevis and the CDF. But not only is it that, but in the next coming few weeks, we are going to also see some work on the beach side of Frigate Bay to enhance that area in terms of bringing back the sand to the beach, because we've had some severe erosion there, and you're going to see some groins and that sort of work being done to bring back the beach to its natural and beautification elements. And I think that over the next couple of months we're going to see a very enhanced Frigate Bay beach, which will bring a number of locals back to the beach and visitors alike. And so you're going to see that. You're going to also see some ongoing works in the Friars Bay area once we move from Frigate Bay into the Friars Bay area to ensure that the beaches are kept intact. I also want to point to the fact that we are doing major work at the Eco Park down in the Sir Gilles area, because we want to bring a new product not only to St. Kitts, but a new product to the region. In fact, that started prior to COVID, where we had some discussions with the cruise lines in terms of what they would wish to see. Really, when visitors come to the islands nowadays, they're very discerning visitors. They no longer want to see the sun, sand, and the sea. It's really something that's going to touch their hearts when they go back home. And so we thought of a number of products that we could do in St. Kitts and Nevis, really touching on our historical past. And so we came up with a number of ideas. And so we threw it out to the cruise lines, which they are happy to hear of. And so we started that progression. But as you would recognize, that COVID came in and has really distorted our progress in those regards. But in any event, we are on our way in terms of making sure that what we deliver, not only to the locals who are here, but to the visitors alike, is a product par excellence and really on the cutting edge of Caribbean tourism. So we expect that that will continue. I also want to touch on the point that the second caller said something, and before I go on to that, I want to encourage the young people. Encourage the young people in St. Kitts and Nevis, because we have a problem. And the problem is that so many of our young people are coming out of the CFBC with languages and not able to really speak the language. And there is a lot of opportunity in that area to make sure that persons are enhancing their capabilities in terms of the languages, so that when the season begins again, that we have those persons engaged. And we would hope that, you know, as we progress in terms of the tourism product, that persons will grasp the languages, not only written but spoken, and so that we do not have to have other persons come in and deal with the language. And so the French, the Spanish, German if we can, Italian, and it's very important. And there's a lot of opportunities. So I'm reaching out and crying out to the young people out there to get involved in that respect. In terms of the second call, I think it was, who spoke about the responses and to the upcoming season and reopening and in conjunction with the marketing overseas, etc. As I said earlier, that's really a fluid situation. And I believe all stakeholders are going to be involved in that, both health, national security, tourism, those in the airports, in the seaports, whatever it is. We have had numerous meetings behind the scenes, trying to ensure that we come up with the best set of protocols. And Mr. Abdel Samuel will tell you the best protocols. Our own protocols, looking at regional protocols, looking at international protocols. But I can tell you, whatever we do in St. Kitts and Nevis in terms of protocols, it would be the best available protocols in conjunction with us that's available. You've seen that we've had a great deal of success in terms of, I wouldn't even call it flattening the curve, but making sure there's no curve. And that we've been very successful at that. So anything we do will be that, we will have to take that on board. The caller spoke about the issue of SCASPA and the depth of the new pier. That issue, as you would recognize, is on the arbitration, and we're trying to work the issues out when it comes to that. And so that will work itself out over the next couple of months and years, I imagine. Just to suffice to say that the government of St. Kitts and Nevis is going to make sure that whatever the outcome is, it's in the best interest of the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. Mr. Prime Minister, I should broach the fact because I know that persons are aware that the cruise industry is, if I am to make an educated guess, would have a challenge in terms of its beginning to operate in this environment. I really don't foresee the cruise industry really burgeoning in terms of early next year. That would be my guess. But while that is happening and it's months away, we have to prepare ourselves in the environment that's to come. And so that's what we're doing. Our efforts are into training, getting in, let's say, protocols on board, and our readiness for the season, whenever that season is. We can't say because it's really fluid. However, what I would say is this, is that there are a number of cruise ships floating around in the waters internationally and require safe havens. And so this government is looking towards to see what we can do as a gesture of cooperation with the cruise industry. And so I would say here today is that you may see a cruise ship in our harbor, but what I would say to you is that persons who may be on the cruise ship will not come off. And they're only crew. They need some safe harbor, and we are working out some protocols to be able to accept them without any harm, any safety issues to people in St. Kitts and Nevis. And so over the next couple of weeks, we are going to be very transparent in what we do in terms of alerting the citizens of St. Kitts and Nevis in terms of what the protocols are with respect to these vessels. So I want the citizens to understand that we are taking the high ground in terms of the safety and security of our citizens. And so everything we do is foremost in our minds. We are ensuring that the safety and security of our citizens is paramount. And so we have been doing, I believe, an excellent job, and we want to continue to do an excellent job. We want you to bear with us as we go through these trying and challenging times in St. Kitts and Nevis. But at the end of the day, I believe there is hope on the horizon, and we want to make sure that within the next couple of months we can get back to some state of normalcy and see St. Kitts and Nevis again being the #1 in the Caribbean and Latin America. Thank you.
We will take a quick break to facilitate the changeover between the Minister of Tourism, who has to leave now, and Ms. Raquel Brown, the CEO of the St. Kitts Tourism Authority. When we come back, we'll also have Mr. Abdias Samuel address a few questions that were directed at him, towards him. And I'm also told that the Prime Minister would like to address a couple of WhatsApp questions that came in. So we'll take a quick break, and then we'll come back to Leadership Matters.
There'll be the postponement of the payment of property taxes for the period June to September 2020.
Protect yourself from the novel coronavirus. Wash your hands thoroughly and frequently for at least 20 seconds each time. Avoid shaking hands and touching your face with unclean hands. If you have to cough or sneeze, do so into your flexed elbow or a paper towel and then dispose of it. Keep a distance of 3 feet away from anyone with the cold or flu-like symptoms. Boost your immune system with vitamins, drink plenty of water, and get adequate rest. Visit your doctor, the nearest hospital, or health center if you or a family member becomes ill. A message from the Ministry of Health and the National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA.
Welcome back to Leadership Matters. I'd like to take the opportunity to thank the Minister of Tourism, Transport and Ports, the Honorable Lindsey Grant, for his presence and contribution tonight. And I'd also like to take the opportunity to now welcome the Chief Executive Officer of the St. Kitts Tourism Authority, Ms. Raquel Brown, who is now sitting on the panel. We will now listen to the responses of Mr. Abdias Samuel, and then we'll turn to Prime Minister Harris, who will address a couple of WhatsApp questions that came in.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to address the first question that was addressed to me, and I want to thank the caller for that question as it regards to volunteering and getting time off from the employer in the private sector in particular. And what I must say to the caller is that one of the things that we seek to do going forward is engage through the Chamber of Industry and Commerce, some of these employers, so they can facilitate national duties by our volunteers, because this is critical. When we are impacted, these are the individuals who respond quickly and help us to rebuild the country. And at the end of the day, the business sector also benefits from their efforts. So, caller, that is some of the engagements that we are going to have with the industry of Chamber of Industry and Commerce going forward. The second question that was addressed to me was regarding to the cruise ship and if we have sufficient manpower and the necessary equipment when we have two major cruise ships docked at our piers. I don't know, as Minister Grant said, when that will be. However, what I can say is that we have been having dialogues with the Ministry of Tourism in collaboration with the Ministry of Health and a number of stakeholders. And we are looking at the various means, whether it be physical or non-physical, that will be required for us to become, remain a marquee destination and be able to process so much persons at one time. The emphasis is not there and that right now, but we are exploring and having that dialogue going forward. But I am of the view that with the protocols and the responsibility, the shared responsibilities between the cruise industry and the destination, we can become again a marquee destination and have the necessary infrastructure in place to be able to process the incoming passengers. Okay, so that is my response to the caller.
Thank you very much, Mr. Samuel. I'd like to invite Mr. Prime Minister to answer a couple of questions from the WhatsApps that came in. Okay, sure. So someone wants to know what happened to the hotels. What happened to the hotels? You have not talked about them in your opening remarks. I'm waiting for an answer. My question is, after being home for 3 months layoff, how much longer I have to wait to get a termination letter from my employer? Yep, that's pretty much it. And the second one relates to the Ministry of Finance. That's question number 1 on this paper. It says, good evening. Things have changed dramatically over the last few months worldwide. Yet it's business as usual for many of the workers in government. Timeliness and efficiency is greatly lacking. Why should it take 2 weeks and still counting to get a simple C-101 form approved? I was told initially that it would be ready by last week, etc. I have worked in a leading institution for several years, so the excuse of having a heavy workload doesn't convince me. There are others who have similar complaints about other departments, and I am certain that more would be said. So those are the questions.
Quickly, in relation to the delay with the C-101 form, that is a matter that has to be investigated. We have to bear in mind that the government departments, a number of persons are working at home. Nonetheless, we would want the department to be at their very best. And so I can assure that we can take remedial action to enhance the delivery of service to the public. We will do so, and I shall inquire of this tomorrow and ensure that some changes are being made. If the caller would care to WhatsApp his or her number to this cell phone, then we can get the particulars to look at the case. 662-7777. If you give the name and number, then we would be in a better position to check where your particular case is at. In relation to the caller the person who WhatsApp on the matter of a 5% in insurance premium, I'm advised that the 5% insurance premium has been in place for a very long time. So there has been no increase in insurance premium. That is the rate that has been in existence over quite a number of years. I am advised by the personnel in the Ministry of Finance. With respect to the opening of the hotel, the person may have missed the fact that we are in fact discussing this. And we did indicate that a number of things have to be done before the hotels can be opened. And the hoteliers, the taxi service providers, the Ministry of Tourism, the bars, you name them, every stakeholder group, and is now engaged with the Ministry of Tourism and with the task force as we build out and we bring assurance that we are ready to do business. So that is where we are at with respect to the hotels, doing the necessary advance work, ensuring that the necessary training, for example, is taking place so that persons are ready to operate in a new environment. When hotels open, they cannot open the same way as they did last time. Special care and consideration will have to be given both to employees and visitors. There has to be the observance of the health protocols, the social distancing, the wearing of the mask, the having where necessary, and we'd expect the larger facilities to have at least a nurse on hand in case anyone was to fall sick. We would expect that there will be different consideration with respect to serving meals by buffet, etc. So there is a reordering of things that would become necessary as we learn to adjust to life in the season of this particular pandemic. And perhaps when the director of our tourism authority speaks, she can remind, because Minister Grant did speak to some of them, of some of the things that we are doing to ensure that we are ready to do business when we open the border. Opening the border, of course, also would require that a number of things be done. There is no magic timing for it, and we will not be hustled into doing it, because the safety of our people come first. We have to recall why the borders were closed. The borders were closed for health reasons. If we had allowed them, a lot more persons would have been infected, and the probability was that our health services would have been overwhelmed, which means that persons would not have been able to get the care in the time in which it was required, and the consequence of that would have been deaths. Because we took the good advice from the persons, the health experts, the NEOC, and we worked the system the proper way. St. Kitts and Nevis is among the few jurisdictions that can say we have no deaths. And we have managed to go through this first wave without any loss of life and without our health systems being overwhelmed. We therefore have to plan carefully, because as we open up to regular travel and more persons are coming in, you also have to ask yourself, well, where will you quarantine them? Where will you put them? And so the NEOC and the task force has to develop a criteria that would help us to make determination as to what entity, what facility could be used as a quarantine going forward as we build out or make preparation for larger numbers. Even as we do that, I said in my opening remarks, we have to make preparation to add to the testing capability, because this is not just 7 or 40 people will be coming in one day. This would be regular daily encounters that we will have. And we have to ensure that we can have reliable tests being delivered in a critical time window if this is going to work. At all costs, we want to avoid deaths. In fact, we shouldn't even be contemplating that. The strategy must that we want to keep our people safe, and we will do all that we reasonably can do to keep our people safe, even as we learn to adjust. So that is the approach we have adopted for now. That approach has served us well, and we will continue to go in that particular way. In almost every area of the tourism plan, there is work to be done. There is going to be work to be done, and we want to ensure that the hotels are ready, the guest houses are ready. And we see the examples elsewhere. In St. Lucia, which has one of the largest hotel stock within the sub-region, only 6 hotels have been allowed to open in their first phase opening. 6. And they have so much more than we have. It's one of the largest and most mature tourist destination, at least in the OECS. Only 6 hotels. And they each had to be certified. In other words, they went through a program, just as our factories went through that particular test, where the health planners and the other people involved with the task force would have gone, done an evaluation, established the standards, evaluate what they have done against the standards. Those are the things that we need to do with respect to the hotels, and ensure that wherever people are going, those hotels are fit for purpose. Fit for purpose, mark you, not just for the tourists, but for their workers. Their workers can't be exposed or overly exposed. And those are the kinds of systems that we want to work. And so it's going to require a new attitude and a new sense of responsibility by all our people. So
Minister,
we want to put that to them.
Sorry, I'm so sorry to interrupt. We have 3 callers on hold. Go ahead, please. You're live on Leadership Matters.
Hi, good night. Good night, Mr. Prime Minister and your panelists. Leadership really matters, and right now we're in a position where we have to have people who are thinking correctly in order to make proper decisions. One of the statement I want to make is about we are preparing for tourists coming into our shores and doing everything that we can so that when tourists come to our shores they can enjoy what we have. What about starting to look at our locals and being able to enjoy basically the same sentiments that the tourists get? We have the people who have those water sporting facilities. We have to realize now it's a holiday season. A lot of our children are home. They've been home for a very long time, locked away. If these people can make, the owners can make the prices more attractive, then locals can basically utilize the same facilities. These are areas that we have to start looking into again. Suppose, for argument's sake, we can't open our shores to tourists for the next 2 years. What are we going to do? You're going to have the water sporting facilities closed down. You have all those catamaran cruises. People can utilize them just like we, all locals, can utilize them just like the tourists can. It's for us now to realize that we have to start making certain changes. Like the old adage would say, you have to eat little and live long. I think we have to start looking into that direction where we can make our prices affordable so that our locals can utilize the same way that foreigners would come in and do the same thing. I listen off here.
Thank you very much. Go ahead, caller. You're live on Leadership Matters. Good night. Okay, I think...
Hello?
Yes, go ahead, sir.
Oh, okay. Good evening, Mr. Prime Minister and the rest of your head table and the moderator. This is Mr. Culture. Mr. PM, I have a suggestion. Since the COVID-19 coronavirus, it is a marathon and no one knows when that is going to be concluded and done away with. So my suggestion to the government is that since we have a white elephant down at Fort Lance called the Fort Thomas Hotel building, why don't we fix it up, remodel it, and have it as what you call a a quarantine base for who will be quarantined, who will be positive with the coronavirus. That's my suggestion for that. And then the second thing is that when are we going to utilize the Cranston La Valley property down there, because no one seems to be playing any golf, and a lot of taxpayers' money is gone into that place, and it's time that we utilize it for either food or something else. Thanks for listening.
You're welcome. Go ahead, caller. You're live on Leadership Matters.
Yes, hello, good night. This is to the Prime Minister. I would like to know if the pensioners who was off, if they are not due to the COVID, because if we are getting enough pension, we will have to go to work, and we bills is getting higher and higher. We were asked to, and I think we need something also. Thank you.
Thank you, caller. Good night. You're live on Leadership Matters. Go ahead, please.
Good night to everybody. This is Dumpling speaking. I would like to say something to Mr. Grant. Mr. Grant, what part of idea by the terminal who was not back that you're going to be just a waste of government money, tax money. You understand? Because the only back to them, they sell the wigs and so. And when the people come out for the boat, it's where the people just stand to wait for when the youth to come for them, because they used to be the drop off and pick up. And now I see them coming and move the stone them, the big stone where you put them in the commando, the cars and sink them, the ship tank. And they say they're going to put bathroom here. You know what you have to put bathroom? You don't have, you have this, must be 4 bathrooms down here where we just sit. And you have 4 up there by the bridge, by Corey. This thing when they pay up thing down there by the ferry terminal, it then jam up them there with this building where the building. And people can't get to walk properly down there, people don't sit with chair and all kind of thing.
Okay.
You know what I used to say they have to do? The last them have to come all the way down. We started the state, parking up all the officer boys, we start to go on the play. And when the people them come to go on the place to put the things on serious flow.
Thank you, caller. Minister Grant left. He had to leave, but the Chief Executive Officer of the St. Kitts Tourism Authority, Ms. Raquel Brown, is here, so she will address your concerns. Go ahead, caller. You're live on Leadership Matters.
Good night, please. Hello?
Yes, go ahead, please. We can hear you.
Yeah, good night, Leadership Matters. Prime Minister, I'm back again, Bucky got it. Question, well, more of a comment. I'm not sure if you're aware, but the pork production have been increased. I've seen a lot of young farmers coming on stream, which means that they're doing the right thing. You have boost agriculture, and a lot of young people are coming on board, and the farmers too. Farming is also increasing. What I want to know, how are we going to fight the importation? If the government will help our local farmers so we can sustain the local market here and decrease, not done away, but decrease the importation of food and meat products.
Thank you very much. We have one call.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Mr. Prime Minister, thank you for keep up that good work we all are doing, the entire panel tonight, particularly. Now, my suggestion, which may sound very weird to everyone else, but I cannot understand why Carnival is being planned this year, considering that there's so many problems involved, and we are working at our country to keep it at the best as possible, trying to open up the borders on top of that, and I cannot understand the Kitchen person themselves have to pay for these carnival costumes and everything. Money is not as available as it used to be. So I'm wondering, why is it that thought hasn't more gone into just having little village carnivals, area carnivals instead, small things, and then go back to our old-time Christmas in the town, and therefore being the highlight of Christmas, bringing God into Christmas, where it should be. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. We have another caller on the line, but I'd like to invite the public to tune in to ZIZ for a special panel discussion this coming Wednesday night. So tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Carnival will be the topic of discussion. We have another caller on the line. Oh, no, we don't? Okay.
Okay.
Good night.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
I want to know when there will be a publication of a set phase plan, aside from the state of emergency restrictions that are currently in place, sort of like a phase plan that's put together by some of the other Eastern Caribbean states. And I'd also like to echo the sentiments of a previous caller in regards to the Fort Thomas Hotel being used as a quarantine facility. So yes, I would like to know when there will be an actual publication of a phase plan. Thank you.
Much. We have another caller on the line. Go ahead, please. Okay, the phone line is flashing. Okay. All right, thank you. I'll go to Ms. Raquel Brown. I'll bring you in. You've been waiting patiently. Thank you very much. Go ahead, please.
Good evening, everyone. There was a caller who Minister Grant spoke to cruise, but there was a question in relation to anticipation of the stayover arrival rate. At this time, with everything that is happening in our source markets, it's really not, we have no way of making any projections. Our hotels are closed, our borders are closed, and so at this time, we have no way of really seeing the forecast. So at this point in time, until we know when our borders are going to be reopened and there is the actual booking in place that will be confirmed by hotels, we can't confirm on our stayover rate. Also, it will also take into account yachting. So at this point in time, however, because our borders are closed, we can't anticipate and we don't want to say what that will be. Also, in relation to opening up the local economy for for citizens and residents to use our attractions, our restaurants, our hotels, and to allow them to have experiences so they too can have a holiday, they can have a staycation. Yes, we agree, and we have met the Ministry of Tourism and St. Kitts Tourism Authority. We have met with our hoteliers and we have had discussions with our tour operators as to regards to the ones that offer water-based activities. So they are looking at their local rates. They do have local rates, but I'm sure they're going to look into revising them, considering the extension of summer and us not having visitors come to the island internationally or regional. Also, attractions that will be determined in the reopening plan, the phase process. So at this point in time, it is going to be discussed. It is going to be looked at what the pricing can be from hotels to attractions to tour operators. As it speaks to the ferry terminal, I know Minister Grant and our PS, Mrs. Caroline Henry Martin, they are working on reviewing the plans for the ferry terminal, and there will be upgrades done. I can't speak to them at this point in time because I know it's a work in progress, but I've taken the caller's notes and I'll ensure that they get them. And I believe I have covered everything for tourism at this point in time. Thank you.
To the West Bus Line, because this came up last week, the expected completion date is the 7th of August of this year. So that is the expected completion date and the West Line bus terminal, and we hope that we will have a delivery even before that. We appreciate the concerns that are being raised with respect to congestions and other difficulty in accessing services, I am certain that the contractor is being advised that he needs to make haste, and I am confident that he will be able to deliver. The Fort Lands property is an interesting property in the context of tourism and in the context of our country. It's one of the better sites, really, and it has done many things, music festival, etc., etc. It is also a property that is well worked, well depreciated, in a dilapidated condition, and therefore I do not think, from the last I would have seen and heard, that much can be done in terms of repairs. And what we will need to do really is to have a brand new facility. Now, the property has been that way because there are a number of persons who have an interest in it. It is not owned by one person. The government has an interest in it, and several other persons scattered across the region has an interest. We discussed this matter with the Ministry of Finance just last week with a view to see how we'll be able to move on that. We are aware that there is a potential buyer, and one of the constraints really in closing the deal in the past had been to ensure that you got enough from the property to at least to pay the creditors, the persons who have an interest. And so this is a matter that we would want to bring some closure with as soon as possible. But we have had some interesting ideas tonight about how that facility could be used. So I want to thank those who have made the suggestions regarding an alternative use of the facility. I am certain that the personalities and the persons involved in our tourism will take note of the idea raised by Radical Culture also as it relates to La Valley. I do not know how much can be done there. It was supposed to have been a golf track, but with all that would have passed, it perhaps is in a state of such significant disrepair that nothing much can be done. But all these things, we are happy that we are being reminded of these matters so that they can be addressed in a constructive way as we move forward to create more opportunities. I like the idea from the caller who spoke regarding what have traditionally been promoted as services for tourists, whether it is the catamaran, the water sports, or other facilities. There is a business opportunity. There is a business opportunity, and if people are thinking as they ought to, as business people, when one opportunity closes, what is the other? Even our taxi people have to begin to look at a build out a new range of services. So it's not just taking people over at Frigate Bay. You could develop something competitive to take somebody from down the terminal to up to the hospital, for example, or to shopping. And these are new areas in which people have to think about how can we earn something in this winter season of the tourism product. Winter in terms of the absence, and winter may still be a bad analogy because winter months should be our best months. But winter in terms of the absence, the hard, difficult period of the tourism sector, that the operators again have to begin to think of new opportunities and utilizing, making sure their services are now affordable for local people to participate. And even as we begin to think about opening, hotel have to build in, and some have really, but perhaps it has to be better promoted, special programs for families to come and to stay, and make the rates almost give away. You lose on the room, you gain by through the restaurants and other supports, and you keep an activity there that draws other people to come. And these are some things that are happening elsewhere, which our hoteliers can't be just stuck in the old way of delivering business and in the people to whom they cater to. So again, we have had new ideas. Not all of these ideas, it should be for us as a government to have to say to people. People who are in business have to look to the next opportunity of service, the next area in which we can build on to make money. But we are happy nonetheless that these considerations are coming out at a time when the Ministry of Tourism is engaging the stakeholders. I would advise Ms. Brown to bring these conversations up, because I know sometimes people at Rams, they want to go to Value Mart. Can't special arrangements be made in terms of the pricing to make these things worthwhile? And I'm sure the volume would be such that you really can do reasonably well with respect to that. Bucky raised the matter of the support, and we have seen good pork quality in our supermarkets, and we want to commend all the farmers who are engaged in livestock production and in particular pork. We have been doing well in the production of pork for a long period of time. Part of the challenge that we have had is the pricing, that relative to the price of the imported pork, the local pork is relatively high. And I'm being careful not to say too high lest anybody misinterpret it, but it is far higher per pound than the price of an imported one. And we have to be able to close the gap somewhat if this is going to be sustainable, because our people want products at affordable prices. Now that the government is giving so much to the farmers, and hopefully that will be sustained for some period in the future, we hope that some of that savings would be reflected in the price. The pricing has to be right. I think everyone wants to support local production, but at times the price that we are hearing is not the best one, and it is discouraging. So we have to try harder to bring our price to an affordable basis. And this idea that some people have, if you don't want to buy it, you leave it, and then you're carrying back home all of those products on Saturday, is not a good one. It is better to reduce the price, get something, than to keep at this very high price and have the attitude, well, if you don't want it, leave it, and not taking down my price. Sometimes we have to take the price down, and there'll be other seasons when we can take up. But I want to give the general assurance, full support of the government for food security and for our farmers and fishers. There was an interesting question raised with regard to Carnival, and I hope I won't attempt to answer it, but it's an important one in the context of our lived reality. Are we contemplating Carnival? What kind of Carnival will we have? And the caller had some interesting ideas. Perhaps the COVID-19 has provided an opportunity for us to get back into seeing more of the build-out of folklore and what you call village carnivals. And perhaps, too, it has provided an opportunity, maybe this December, we will hear a lot more of the traditional forms of Christmas music, which at times gets crowded out in the context of our carnival and the build-out of that one. So it's a really interesting conversation. There are ideas that we welcome, and tomorrow there's an opportunity to discuss Carnival in more detail, but I'm happy to have heard such thought-provoking consideration with respect to this matter.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. Yes, the topic of the panel discussion, which will take place tomorrow, Wednesday, will be, can we reinvent the way we celebrate? You can tune in on ZIZ's social media platforms, and I think it will also be on radio and television, but more info will be provided tomorrow. Tomorrow it will air 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. The panelists will include Ms. Shannon Harley, who is the chairperson of the St. Kitts and Nevis National Carnival Committee. We'll take a very quick break. I'd like to give you the numbers to call just one last time. 869-466-2666, 662-8674, 767-4765, and our overseas line is 239-645-4500. When we come back from the quick break, we'll take about 1 or 2 more calls, and then we'll go into the wrap-up of the program. We'll be back.
There will be fresh sums invested in the popular Fresh Start program to assist the poor and marginalized youths by providing access to capital to fund small and medium-sized business projects. $5 million will be provided in this regard.
Welcome back to Leadership Matters. I'd like to give Mr. Abdia Samuel an opportunity to respond to one of the questions that was asked. So, Mr. Samuel, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Ms. Moderator. The question was, when are we going to see a phase plan rollout? And what I want to say to the caller is, once we have gotten the plan together, submitted to Cabinet, and Cabinet has approved the plan, then we are going to make it user-friendly, ensuring that we disseminate the plan in a phased way, a very understandable way for everybody to know what is expected going forward in the different phases. So that is the process that we are going to adopt in the phase plan rollout process. Thank you.
Thank you. We don't have any calls right now, so I will invite Ms. Raquel Brown to give some brief closing remarks.
Sure, thank you. Just to remember that this is an unprecedented time in tourism, as the Prime Minister said. This is very new to the world, it's global, and each destination in the Caribbean is really doing what they think is best. And so I really would like to say to our stakeholders and to our citizens and residents, we have to do what's in the best interests of St. Kitts and Nevis. We have to do what we think is right to sustain us, not just for today, but for tomorrow. And, you know, we will see other destinations, and some of them are open, and we've seen that some of them are really challenged. For example, I would have never thought I would have seen Bahamas not allowing U.S. Visitors to their island, because 90% of their visitation is from the U.S., whether it is stayover and whether it is cruise. And we're not just talking about Nassau, we're talking about the outer islands also. So at this point in time, it is a really critical situation, and we may see more and more destinations looking to not have the U.S. in terms of coming for visitation and have travel advisories. We see each day, I see it myself, where there are destinations that are currently open that are delaying their U.S. carrier flights into their destination, for example, Barbados and St. Martin. So we really do have to be careful. There are questions always about cruise, but over the weekend, the decision was made by the CDC to again extend the no-sail order to September 30th. Because cruise lines were not meeting the requirements. The cruise lines that they stated that were meeting the requirements were Royal Caribbean and MSC. There is only one cruise line that is allowed right now to sail to the Bahamas, and it's a Bahamas cruise that's, I think, about 3 days. It's none of the leading cruise lines that we see coming to St. Kitts. It's really a casino turnaround to Nassau from Fort Lauderdale. So at this point in time, we really have to be careful. We know we have around 5,000 persons working directly and indirectly in the tourism industry, and it is a very, very difficult time. However, we have to ensure that when we open, not only are we safe, but the message that we communicate to the travel trade, to the consumers, whichever source market it is, whether it's wholesale operators, vacations for American Airlines vacations, Expedia, Kayak, whether we're talking about just a consumer going online to a hotel, that there is information there that speaks to our credibility. Credibility is going to be very, very important. It's going to be the extra value. It's not necessarily just about a discounted room or services, but the destination has to qualify what it is saying. And for St. Kitts, because as Minister Grant said earlier, we have a very experienced and discerning traveler that's coming to St. Kitts and Nevis. They're not persons who are not going to be aware of what safety protocols are. They're going to be looking. They're going to be from arrival to departure. So we really have to ensure all of our stakeholders, even down to our craft vendors, even down to the persons who have beach bars, we have to ensure that we have protocols for everyone to ensure that the destination is safe and remain healthy. You know, there's risk involved, and we understand that. However, we don't want to end up where we have to result in a complete shutdown. That is a negative impact, and we've seen what has happened to Antigua in their first 2-3 weeks of opening. So we have to be very careful, and we also have to remember too, in some of the destinations, as the Prime Minister said, for example, St. Lucia, where there are only 7 properties, a lot of those properties, the tourism resorts, are all inclusive. So they're able to have persons stay at the property. They have employees living on property. They're actually discouraging persons to go out to have dinner, to do tours, to do attractions. It's supposed to be provided on island. That's not our tourism plan. That's not what we promote. We promote coming to the destination and having an all-inclusive experience of the destination, going out to eat, going down to the strip, enjoying yourself, sitting down at a beach bar, relaxing, deciding which beach you want to go to for the day, because we don't have private beaches. So at the end of the day, we have to be very careful, and our extension of how we do this will be different from the other destinations, because we have a tourism product that is inclusive of everyone. So we really do have to be careful about what we do and how we do it. We are not quiet in the marketplace. We've been using social media to keep our presence alive. As Minister spoke to, we're doing different activities in different markets because how we speak to our market is different. Yes, we're concerned about the US, who isn't, but it doesn't mean that we're not looking at options to what can happen with Canada or the UK for the upcoming season for stayover, and looking at opportunities for yachting to see how we can grow many of those vessels, whether they're from 30 feet to super yachts. They didn't spend time in the Mediterranean this season, so they're looking for somewhere to go. They are the typical type of customer that we want to come to St. Kitts. So we have already started to look at the marketing and speaking to that demographic so that we can have them look at St. Kitts because they've been to Antigua, St. Lucia, St. Vincent, St. Martin. So what is it about St. Kitts that will be appealing? We already promote social distancing, and everything about the destination speaks to that management of COVID-19. So we are looking towards a direction that when we reopen, we have the safety protocols to help us to improve the integrity of our tourism brand, and then when persons do come, they will have positive responsive to give back to their travel agents or to their families. They'll use social media to spread the word. So at this time, yes, I know everybody is frustrated, but I think it's worth the direction that we wait and we try to do it better than anyone else, so that we can be remembered, just like as we were in an article that we were the smallest island in the Western Hemisphere not to have any COVID cases. So it's important. There's always something called free publicity, and we got a lot from that article. We get queries every day still about when we're opening our border. So I do believe what we're doing in our social interaction is helping, and the demographic that we speak to is looking at St. Kitts, and so we do have to be careful. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I invite Mr. Abdius Samuel to make his closing remarks.
Thank you, Ms. Moderator. I think at this moment all I want to say is that innovation and creativity are some of the characteristics that we need to employ as we seek to remain on top of the mountain in this competitive world. Now, I think Ms. Raquel Brown has said everything that needed to say in terms of our tourist market. And what I want to reassure the general public is that we are going to do everything necessary to have that multi-stakeholder approach, that all of society approach in ensuring that we continue to have St. Kitts and Nevis as marquee destination for this great tourist product that we have. And we will not compromise the health and safety and well-being of our people. But yet, at the end of the day, we have to strike that balance that is necessary in terms of the virus in itself and the economic activities needed for us to survive. And I want to thank the support that we have been getting so far, and we will continue to work in the best interest of the citizens and residents of St. Kitts and Nevis. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will now invite the Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis to deliver his closing remarks.
Thank you very much, Valencia. I want to firstly say a hearty thank you to all those who took time to tune in to this particular edition of the Leadership Matters program. And leadership does in fact matter a great deal. And that is why I chose to come week after week to help the country better understand issues of national importance, to hear their views on these particular matter, because the government that I lead belongs to the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. And so we want your input. The consultative approach is working well. Tonight we heard some very interesting views on the subject matter and other matters, ideas that we can grab and put to work to advance the economic growth and development of St. Kitts and Nevis. So again, I want to congratulate all those who called in and those who tried by WhatsApp to make an input. Raquel spoke about the need to ensure the safety of the destination as a whole. And that to me is very critical. When we are ready to open, we will know. We will know because we would have done as much of the work that is required to be done so we can say we are ready to do business. And you will see the difference. You'll see the difference in the look, for example, at our airports. You will see the difference in the way in which our people are ready to engage, whether they are the immigration officers, the police, the customs officers. All of those people have to undergo a systematic program of training to give the visitor. And importantly, the director of the authority says we have a discerning visitor. In other words, people who know what a destination should offer and are willing to spend their money to get value for their money. And therefore for them, it is the experience from entry to exit that must be right. The experiences at our airport must be encouraging and welcoming, especially when people now have the additional worry of the COVID pandemic around them. We have to be even more courteous. In our hotels, we have to prepare for that discerning visitor who would come to our shores, and we have to prepare for safety. In other words, in a new environment, health consciousness will pervade everywhere. And we have to know that we can deliver, and I know that we can, because we have delivered in a safe way with respect to the opening up of the agricultural sector. We delivered in a safe way with respect to the opening up of the saloons. And when people were questioning, why you all open the barber shop and the hairdressing saloon, the chief medical officer and those at NEOC, God bless Mr. Samuel, they said, we have a protocol, and once persons comply with this protocol, the risks are minimized. And that is what we want, minimizing the risks to everyone as we operate. We see how carefully we went about opening up the manufacturing sector. We started first in very special circumstances with Harrissover, where Harrissover had to come in service to the entire world in terms of providing parts for the production of ventilators, which were scarce globally. And out of the White House, we were getting calls almost on a daily basis. Imagine a factory in St. Kitts put St. Kitts and Nevis as a country of some significant consideration for the White House that was calling us to engage us as to how we can facilitate the opening of Harrissover. And that is why today Harrissover, which one of the plants should have closed in end of April, is now opening, and we hope that that will continue for a while. All those were things that came out of the ongoing negotiations with respect to that particular facility. The short point is that we could rely upon the task force to deliver quality work. None of the areas that they have opened up has to date brought us any trouble, to my knowledge and belief. Therefore, we could rest assured that the gentlemen and the ladies who are working on the task force, they know what to do. They are reading, they are researching, they are getting advice, and they are coming up with the best model. I have confidence that they will do the same, and they are doing the same because they already began their engagement with respect to our hotels and the various other areas. Look, we started with the restaurants. First, you could only do pickup. Now you can do in-dining once you observe certain protocol, the social distancing, the wearing of masks, etc. So we know how to do it, and we just have to have confidence. Abdia spoke about the virtues of innovation and creativity. I just want to add two more. As we continue the task of nation building, industry and discipline becomes critical. More of our people have to be disciplined to doing the things that are needed to improve their quality of life, to improve the quality of life of their families, their communities, and their country. And more people have to want to work. That is what industry is about. You have to want to produce something positive. And so I want to encourage in particular our young people to become more innovative, to become more creative, to become more industrious, and be disciplined in what you do. Without these virtues, these attributes, then you are not going to be able to contribute successfully to building that Garden of Eden, which we said that the next 5 years should be about. In closing then, I feel very pleased by the conversations we have had tonight and by the quality of the engagement that we have had. I have learned quite a bit from hearing from the fellow panelists who are all here, and we are all in one accord in terms of the need for a careful, managed approach to opening up the country. We have seen, and Ms. Brown made mention of that, I don't have to go back to that, what happens when other countries move a particular way. And she's right. The Bahamas experience is a real telling one. Bahamas perhaps has the biggest bonanza of being so close to the United States of America, has very special relationship with the USA, special travel arrangement with the US of A. And to get up one day to hear the Prime Minister said, well, this thing not working out. Our people are being exposed beyond what we considered to be an acceptable risk. And therefore, our Bahamas Airways, it will stop going to the USA for the time being. And we also are not going to be allowing a number of the US carriers to come. We are going to welcome those from Canada and, as it were, low to moderate risk jurisdiction. It is these things that we must ponder as we try to meander our way safely out of the COVID-19 pandemic. We must not lose hope, and we must not lose confidence. I want us to remain confident and hopeful that working together, just as we all were talking here, finding ideas, each one learning from each other, working together, we can resolve the challenges that are there, and most importantly, beyond the challenges, find new opportunities for the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. And whether these new opportunities are going to come in new product offerings, which Ms. Brown spoke about and Minister Grant spoke about tonight, or it's going to be new sites, new locations, whatever it is, we have new opportunities to consider. And those of us who are the first to come forward with these ideas are going to get the first mover advantage. So God bless this country that I love, and may God bless the people of St. Kitts and Nevis, and let us all continue to keep ourselves safe by following the protocol and, leave the rest to God.
Thank you very much, Mr. Prime Minister. I have updated information on the panel discussion titled, Can We Reinvent the Way We Celebrate? It will be only on Facebook. You can check it out on ZIZ's Facebook page tomorrow, Wednesday, July 22nd, from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. The panelists will be Ms. Shannon Hawley, Raphael Rodney, Clement Monarch Ogaro, and Patrice Harris. Indeed, when all of us look at the excellent all-of-society approach to the coronavirus pandemic here in St. Kitts and Nevis, we can say indeed leadership matters. There has been meaningful collaboration between the private sector and the government, and businesses in St. Kitts and Nevis must be commended for their effective response. I'm sure many of us, most of us, all of us have seen the no mask, no entry signs that are placed on all businesses, in fact. And when you go in there, you get your hand sanitizers, and everything is pretty effective. So we thank the businesses for working hand in hand with the government. And in fact, Prime Minister Harris has come out front very early to strongly encourage the wearing of masks. And it's also included in the Emergency Powers COVID-19 number 10 regulations, which you can find on www.sknis.kn and on all the government platforms. Regulation number 15 speaks to wearing masks outdoors. So thank you very much for joining us tonight and for spending this time with us. Have a good night.
There will be the postponement of the payment of property taxes for the period June to September 2020.
Protect yourself from the novel coronavirus. Wash your hands thoroughly and frequently for at least 20 seconds each time. Avoid shaking hands and touching your face with unclean hands. If you have to cough or sneeze, do so into your flexed elbow or a paper towel and then dispose of it. Keep a distance of 3 feet away from anyone with the cold or flu-like symptoms. Boost your immune system with vitamins, drink plenty of water, and get adequate rest. Visit your doctor, the nearest hospital, or health center if you or a family member becomes ill. A message from the Ministry of Health and the National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA.